see the rent, but it's not, it's nothing like Texas. I mean, there are people. I rarely dove hunt until we started going out there. Wing shooting, man, that's a different world, like ducks and all that. It's just a different world. But I'm looking forward here in about a month from today, tomorrow, is chasing them turkeys. That's what I'm looking forward to.
That season's here, isn't it?
Boy, it is, isn't it?
How was the hog hunt this past weekend?
We
Well,
slaughtered
we
them.
yeah, I killed. I think five, maybe six. I think five though.
No,
Uh,
we had six.
Six, okay.
Yeah, we cleaned six, but I think there was three other hits and got away.
Hmm.
Yeah. And some guys seen. I mean, they thought they were bears. They were so big. And I tell you what was neat about it too. And I was pleasantly surprised because it was the first time that I went to that place, even though I'd known that guy for 20 years roughly. It's a high fence, but it wasn't like you were shooting hogs out of a pen. You know, it was 160 acres, and at that time when we got there was about 70 hogs there. So there was guys, who went times and never even seen a hog, and they were, and definitely would not see many, or they would, and then missed a shot or whatever. So everybody felt like they were hunting. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't just like I said, some pinned up deal. So it was good. There's Derek and Ken, everybody, and Rodney. What
Hey,
up,
hey,
Rodney?
how's it going?
Good. It's about time you got up. Yeah. Well, it's 7:31, and we better get this thing on the road here. Appreciate y'all showing up. Let me just make my announcements again. The hog hunt was great. I'm going to be in North Carolina on the 27th. I'm going to get to go to Myrtle Beach in a day early and get to do some coastal water fishing. That'd be good. The turkey hunt's now full. The golf event is now full. Even though we do have a waiting list that we're making. So it's full in Concan. Um, and we have circled a couple of dates for the faith event in Aspermont in June. And, again, we'll take no, I mean, there's going to be me, Scott, and John there. So we'll take no more than 7 to that event. And the trout deal in July, we still have, I think, about 5 spots available for that. And the dove hunt, we've got about, probably 6 or 7, 5 or 6, something like that, spots available for that one. We're working on another faith event, and then another one that's sort of part 2 of the faith events. So anyway, just keep up with that. And if there's something that you want to ask me about, of course, you got my number, and I mean, if you don't get it, and call me or email me, and love to talk to you. And also, hey, while we're doing this, I think everybody's done it though, pretty much. Just I started saying, because Jeff tells me to, just like mute your phone, your microphone while we're doing this. Then at the end, we'll get it. Cut down a little noise. All right, let me read my article, and then we'll go from here. Deer give us a great example of how patterns change according to one's needs. Right now, in many parts of the country, we're seeing a changing pattern. I always break these down into 3 periods: early spring through late summer through fall, and winter. Let me explain. In the early spring through late summer, the land is full of all sorts of food. The deer do not have to travel far to get a variety of tasty foods. During these times, they are somewhat unpredictable because there is no particular place that is more special than another. Late summer through the fall is much different. During this time, soft mast, such as apples, pears, and other fruits, begin to fall off the trees. And since deer love these, you can trust the fact they will show up with regularity. This also goes for their favorite nuts, acorns, or what we say around here, acorns. This hard mass will show up on trees that are both out in the open and hidden deep in the woods. These will become a major source of nutrition, especially as the leaves and plants succumb to the upcoming frost. Lastly, there's the winter months when a deer's food sources will amount to what acorns are left and the grasses that are in open fields. Each of these periods will cause a deer's normal pattern to be changed, and it's all according to need. Similarly, the needs of individuals change over time, and as a result, our patterns change. A great example is those couples who have been without children for the first few years of marriage and then decide to have children. Talk about changing patterns. I'll guarantee whatever one was doing before children has significantly changed after the arrival of those little stinkers. The changing of needs has determined the changing of needs has determined a change of what once was a normal pattern. It is very important in our spiritual life to evaluate whether or not our needs are different to what they were, let's say, than a few years ago. They actually should be. I would hope you and I have grown to the place that what once met our needs no longer does. I would hope we are continuing to grow in a way so that on occasion we look around and say, I'm really tired of this same old grass and sure would like to chomp on a few tasty apples. But in order to enjoy the new crop of goodies God has for you, you're going to have to change the pattern you're in. I don't know what it might be, but I can tell you this. If you find yourself waning in your spiritual life, it might be that God is trying to get you to realize you're not the person you used to be, and what was good for you then is not what you need now. It's foolish to keep browsing on spiritual milk when God has other stuff for you now, but it's up to you to move. Let me get my notes here. I have a big idea here, but it's also sort of a big concern. And the big idea in this is simply that you can't grow and stay the same. You can't grow and stay the same. Actually, growth demands change. That is, you can't grow. It's impossible to grow without changing. And changing demands like new stuff. I mean, for instance, a kid's body grows and it demands new clothes and new shoes. And even as our mind grows, it demands change. That is, when we all gain more knowledge, we automatically sort of move from what we used to believe, not sort of automatically. It's natural that we move from what we used to believe to this new belief. I used to tell students, or I still do, that you can't believe what you know to be a lie. It's impossible to believe what you know to be a lie. And so whatever knowledge you have, you move to what that new truth is. And so this new belief, and it also happens, we know this in school, and it happens as we learn more about God. It happens in school. And it happens as we learn more about God, or our spiritual school. But here is where we sometimes forget about how the school life and our spiritual life are the same. And that's what I want to talk about, because it's in the testing. The testing. You see, you don't attend any kind of school. You don't attend any kind of school without a test, without testing. Listen, if you're becoming a plumber, I teach at a technical school. I don't teach technical stuff, but it's a technical and community college. But if you're learning to become a plumber, they're going to test you at school under those circumstances to see if you've got it. Whether it's a plumber, whether it's a doctor, whether it's a real estate person, you're going to have to take a test. Whether it's a banker, in order that you're getting a degree in banking, you're going to have to take a test. In order to become that person or that profession, you've got to pass tests. And what do tests do? They reveal whether we're ready for the real event. Okay? A test is simply to say, we're going to test you to see if you're ready to handle the real thing. We're testing you to see if you can put this plumbing together, to see when you're out in somebody's house if it's going to work. I remember, as a kid, watching TV every now and then, this big beep would come on for a minute. Remember that? And then all of a sudden there would be a announcement that would say, if this would have been, this is a test of the emergency broadcasting system. If this would have been an actual emergency, you would have known where to turn. So there's a lot of beeps that happen in our life, and they're saying the same thing, that if this would have been an actual emergency, you would have known where to turn. That's what a test is. It's testing us to see how we'll respond when we're out of the classroom and we're into the real world. And it's the same in our Christian life. After times of growth, now, and this is so important, it's really what was sort of I'm thinking about in this article, and life. As you and I have times of growth, God is going to test us to reveal what measure of life we can handle and what measure of trust we're ready for. And what I mean by what measure of trust is, what can God trust us with? What can God trust us with? And here's the thing that we need to remember, that it's important that tests are not given so that God can find out how far we've come, because he already knows. They're not given to reveal to God how far we've come or what we're ready for. But tests are given to all of us so that we can see how far we've come, that we can see, what, if what we've been learning sort of has taken effect. One person put it this way, that a faith that is not tested is a faith that cannot be trusted. And you know that in every walk of life, a faith that is not tested is a faith that can't be trusted. So as you and I, here's how it happens, as you and I continue, and I'll get sort of personal here a little bit, as you and I continue to learn more about God, and as we do it in situations like this, just a Zoom on a Tuesday morning, and other situations, whether it's at a church on Sunday or another group that you're in, as you and I continue to learn about God in these situations and others like these situations, there's going to be times that God is going to interrupt our learning. He's going to interrupt what you're learning to say, all right, we've been doing this for a few weeks now. It's time for a test. Okay. It's time for a test to see, so you can know and I can know that do I really believe this with my head, or do I believe that with my heart? I can remember one time sitting with a guy, and God was taking me through a whole lot of stuff. And he's a friend of mine, and we were sitting at a coffee, drinking coffee, and his name was John, and he'd been going through a lot of faith stuff with me as I was growing, and we were talking about giving. And I said, John, can you outgive God? And and I've been raised in church all my life, so I knew the cliche answer, and I loved his answer though. I said, can you outgive God? And he had the perfect answer. He said, I don't think so. He didn't beat his chest out, said, no, you can't outgive God. I hate that, But he had a really great answer. He said, I don't think so. And I said, I don't think so either. I said, but I only know that cerebrally. I don't know that experientially. Right. See, and I can remember actually writing in my journal one time, I'm trying to outgive God, and so far it's working. but see, that's our whole life. That's our whole Christian life. Our whole Christian life is learning, is coming to know experientially what we say we know cerebrally. That's our whole Christian life. And in order to know that we know it experientially, God has to allow us to go through tests. So he's going to interrupt our learning with a test. And we need to tattoo that fact on our brain. And let me tell you why. Because here's what I see from a lot of people. I see a lot of people get taken aback when these tests come. I mean, they get surprised. And here's exactly what Peter said. He wrote this, and it's in 1 Peter chapter 4. He wrote this. He said, dear friends, don't be surprised when the fiery ordeal comes among you to test you, as if something unusual were happening to you. So he says, man, don't be surprised as if something when you're tested, as if something unusual is happening. And you and I know that instinctively. We know that. Why? Because there's no thing that we're trying to do or be that doesn't come with a test. We just know that. And he's saying this. He's saying, don't be caught off guard when your faith is tested. Don't be caught off guard. So let me give you 5 things real fast, about this to remember. And I've got other stuff if I can get to it. And these are I'll give them to you really fast. Number one, remember that God's tests are pop quizzes. God's tests are pop quizzes. Now, he does tell us they're going to be tests, but he don't tell us when they're going to come. Okay. They're all pop quizzes. We know they're coming. We just don't know when. Tests are always periods of interruption. Okay. Now, nobody likes interruptions. Nobody likes interruptions. We got our to-do list today. We know what we need to get done today. And when we don't like that phone call that we're not expecting, that we think that person's going to spend, we don't like, anybody messing with our normalcy. But listen, tests will always be interruptions, and there are periods of interruptions and those periods can be short. They can be a few minutes or they can be extended. So God's tests are always pop quizzes. That's what he says. Don't be surprised. Why? You can be surprised if you don't realize that they're pop quizzes. The second thing we see in this verse, he says, and this is so important, tests are not the unusual, but they are the usual. Okay. Tests are not the unusual, but they're usual. This is what he says. He says, dear friends, don't be surprised when the fiery ordeal comes among you to test you, as if something unusual were happening to you. And what he's saying is, listen, guys, tests are not something that are unusual. They're the norm. And when we start thinking about God's going to test me, and tests are normal, just like anything else we learn in life, then we become more ready for them. So, number 2, tests are not the unusual, but they're the usual. Number 3, your reaction reveals your readiness. Your reaction reveals your readiness. Now, this is it. Someone has said that actions speak louder than words. Here's what God says. God says reactions speak louder than both actions and words. Okay, reactions, how you react, speaks louder than actions or words. See, when you and I are not ready for these tests, here's how we respond. Now, all these are not always bad, but here's how we respond when we're not ready for tests, when we don't expect them, when we think they're unusual, and when we're not ready because of our faith. We respond with worry, we respond with anger, we respond with complaining, we respond with excessive questioning, and we respond. And here's the key: exactly like the rest of the world responds. And this is really how God separates Christianity and Christians from all other people. And I'll get to that. So, your reaction reveals your readiness. Will you react like the rest of the world, or are you going to react like God wants us to react? So we'll talk about how he wants us to react here. So number 4, then, your fear reveals the object of your trust. Your fear reveals the object of your trust. Now, okay, let me twist it a little bit, twist the knife in a little bit. What do you get afraid of more than anything during, are you afraid of relationships? Are you afraid of money? What are you live in fear because of what political party is in power? You see, your fear reveals the object of your trust. You see, if we fear losing control, it might reveal that our trust is in our ability to manage outcomes rather than God's sovereignty. If we fear financial loss, maybe our trust is in money to provide our security rather than God's provision. If we fear rejection, maybe our trust is in the approval of others rather than God's acceptance. If we fear illness or death, then it could reveal that our trust is in our physical health rather than God's eternal promises. See what you fear. And how do you know that? Let me tell you how you know it. As soon as you get into a test, and I'll talk about that in a minute. As soon as a test comes, you'll recognize your fear. So, and that's why it's the only reason that I know why that God says, fear him. You see, all through the Bible, it says, fear him. Not that we're to be shaking in our boots when we think about God or look at God. It's not that. It's that your fear reveals the object of your trust. Here's what Solomon said in the Proverbs. He said in Proverbs 9, he said, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. The fear of God, the Lord, is the beginning of wisdom. And what is wisdom? Wisdom is simply knowing what to do with knowledge. When a lot of people have plenty of brains, they just don't know. They ain't got no common sense. They don't know what to do with it. So wisdom is knowing what to do with knowledge. So he says the fear of the Lord is the beginning of that, because the Lord is supposed to be the object of our trust, right? And here's two verses I use a lot, and they meant a lot to me. Isaiah wrote this in Isaiah 26:3. He wrote, you, speaking of God, you will keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on you, because he trusts in you. Okay. So if we're going to move from fear, then or if our fear reveals where our trust is, God says, I'm going to if you trust me, I'm going to give you peace. And then we know that verse that Paul writes, that's one of my favorites, that Paul writes in Philippians 4. He says, be anxious for nothing. Don't worry about anything. He says, but in everything, by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God, and the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds through Christ Jesus. So in the middle of all of our tests, God says, listen, trust me in the middle of all our tests, and I'm going to give you a supernatural peace. And this is this is the reason he does it. Okay. And I'll get to that. So it's the reason he does it. He's going to give us peace so that the world can see, and I'll mention that in a minute. It's so the world can see that we're handling things different, because everybody has tests. Everybody's going to have tests, but Christians are to handle those things differently. Our trust is in God. So let me give you 5 things, just words to write down how, and I talk about this in our faith deal. What form do these tests come? So how do these tests come, and what form do they come in? Okay, and again, I can't spend much time here. What form do they come in? I mean, let's write these words down if you're writing, and I'll just run through them fast. The 5 words are this. I'll start with W: waiting, withholding, withdrawing, wounding, and wanting. Okay, waiting is the first. Waiting, withholding, withdrawing, wounding, and wanting. Okay, so okay, God, we've been learning, we've been growing, we've been learning about God. Says now it's time for a test. So how's it show up? First of all, it can show up, and pretty much all these involve waiting. Okay, and God says, okay, just wait right here. But God, it's going to be too late. Just wait, trust me. But God, the time's come, it ain't going to work. Trust me, wait. He does it through waiting. He does it through withholding. Okay, that is, I think about this situation with Hannah in the Bible, how long God prayed for a baby, and God says no. Okay, so God withhold things from us that we think that we want, and God's saying, trust me. Okay, it might be withholding a job, it might be withholding a wife, it might be a lot of things, but he says he withholds. And then withdrawal, that is that there's times that you say, God, where are you at? I mean, you feel like your prayers are not going above the roof, and if God has withdrawn himself from you, and you can't go on what you feel about God, but you got to go on what God already says, that I'll not leave you or forsake you. And then the fourth one is wounding, that God wounds us. It might be through a divorce or a death or a sickness or injury. God allows Satan to bring that into our life to where we think that, you know what, I can't trust God and I can't make it past all these things. And it can cause us to fear, because that's what our hope is in, or it'll cause us to trust God more. But again, these are all tests. And the last one is wanting. That is God. And this one is one that we sometimes, well, we do. We have a choice. We can say yes or no. That is, God says, I want you to do something. Okay. And whatever he wants you to do is going to cost you something. It's going to cost you time. It's going to cost you money. It's going to cost you a profession. It's going to cost you something, and you'll have a choice. So these are the way God tests us. So with those, how can we be ready? How can we be ready? All right, when these tests come, how can we be ready before the tests come? I'm gonna give you these things, and I'm done. Sorry, a lot of lists here. Number one, expect the tests. Expect the tests. You know they're coming. I mean, it's like anything else in life. You can't, you can't become anything you want to pass. You can't become anything you want to become without a test. So expect the tests, number one. Number two, detect the tests. That means when you get in a pickle, when you get in a situation, when you get, when something interrupts your life that you don't like, recognize that this is a test. Because God's got you. He's not going to leave you. God's got you. So expect the tests. And then when they come, detect them. Call them what they are. Okay. It's a test. It's what it is. Number three, this is at that moment, number three, check your fear. Check your fear. Why? Because your fear is going to reveal where your trust is. Now, that don't mean that you're not going to have temptation to fear whatever it is, but you recognize that. You lose your job all of a sudden, and your first thing is your fear is, how am I going to get paid? That's normal. But what I'm saying is, at that time is when you check that fear and say, oh, wait a minute, my fear is in my income. And God says, wait, no, don't, I'm your provider, not that job. I'm your provider. And we see it all through the Bible. So check your fear. And then the fourth thing is embrace your peace. Okay. I've said it many times, and that the only emotion that you can trust is peace. And what God has promised to give us is peace. Now, this is, lost my note here. This is, so embrace your peace. I'll say something about that in a minute. Embrace your peace. God says, I'll keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed upon you, because he trusted you. He says, don't worry about anything. Pray about everything. Tell God what you need. Thank him for what he does. And he says, and the peace of God, and then that caveat phrase, that passes all understanding. You won't be able to understand it. And the world won't be able to understand it. He says, well, guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. And then the fifth thing is this. During that time, ask God what he wants you to do or what he wants you to know during that time of testing. Say, God, I'm right here in the middle of this. What do you want me to know? What do you want me to do during this time of testing? So with that, and this is why we do this. See, he is testing us. Why does he even do this? Why these tests? There's a lot of reasons. Some of them, take us, whatever he has planned for us in heaven. But here's the difference for the world. He's testing us so that an unbelieving world will see how different God sustains his people during difficulties. And let me say it another way. He's testing us so that the world will see how our reactions are different than the world's reactions. We've used this a lot of times that God, it's one thing. The world will have peace on each side of the storm. Before the storm, the world will have peace. After the storm's over, the world will have peace. The difference is, God says for his people, if you'll trust him, he will give you peace in the middle of the storm. And that's when an unbelieving world says, man, how in the world can you be so calm? How in the world can you have so much peace? How in the world can you not just be going nuts? Because of the situation you're in right now. And it's then you'll be able to say, you know what? God has given me peace. And I can't even explain it myself. I should be going nuts. But God has given me a supernatural peace in the middle of the storm, not peace before or after the storm, but peace in the middle of it. So, guys, tests are normal. Some of you going through tests. Just expect them, detect them, what they are, check your fear. Your fear will determine what you trust. Embrace that peace. Ask God what he wants you to know and do during that time. But let me pray for you. We'll hang around and you can talk and ask questions or leave. Lord, thank you for these guys. Again, I know that many of them here, if not all of us right now, are going through some tests. And I just pray that we would just, first of all, recognize that you control the thermostat, you control the timer on every test, and that our hope is not in anything else, but it's in you. You're our protector, you're our provider, you're our sustainer, you're our overcomer. I pray that you encourage these guys with these truths. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, guys, thanks for coming. Y'all, again, I'm hanging out, but if you need to leave at this moment, you can leave. And otherwise, I'm staying here as long as you need me to. Anybody got a good word to say?
Gary,
You got to
speaking
say,
a good word, man, that was a good word right there. I think you nailed it in the prayer. I certainly am, and I can only imagine that most of these other gentlemen, some way, somehow, are going through a test right now, and it's this is good to expect it and realize, we're here, we're right where God wants us, and we got to turn to Him to. For everything you just said, no reason to repeat it, but that's where our strength comes from and our guidance. Good word, man.
thank you, brother. Thank you. Anybody else? Everybody good? And Jeff recorded this. If you or somebody want to go back and listen to it, I don't know why you would, but I'm kidding. But it'll be on the website here in a few hours or tomorrow or something. But you can go back. A lot of note taking in that one. Yeah, we are all going through tests. That's no doubt about it. I am.
Good.
Everybody good?
Gary, great word today. I think the first two are pretty easy. Expect the test and detect the test, but the last three can be a little tougher. Check your fear. We're going through a big tester right now, and just kind of processing through that yesterday. The fear aspect of it, the what ifs, and the personality we're dealing with is kind of tough, and so. And then the last one is what does God want me to know or learn from this? And that's where we need to get to. So thank you. Very timely word for us today. So
Well, thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. All right. First of the month, we're giving away another Bass Pro card. So y'all stay tuned for that. Anybody else? Everybody good? All right, I'll let you go then. Listen, holler at me after this if you need me. We'll talk to me.